Men of culture. We meet again. And perhaps the one or two ladies that also clicked into this video, hello. We have some very important stuff to talk about. We have 8,008s to talk about. What is 8,008s? Let's not pretend like we haven't all been to elementary school. Okay, you know exactly what I am talking about, which is, of course, the explosion of Dave Stevens covers on the comic book market. Who would have thought that the only thing to go against the grain of prices correcting would have been very nicely drawn figures from the 1980s. So in this video, we need to talk about this recent explosion of Dave Stevens. I know what you guys are already thinking. Dave Stevens has been popular for many years, Swag. You don't know what you're talking about. But person out there who's been a Dave Stevens OG collector, there's nothing quite like the recent movement we have seen in the last 3 months. So in this video, I want to talk about Dave Stevens, talk about why the explosion has all of a sudden started, at least, what was the initial catalyst to all these books getting hot. And then later on in the video, talk about, 10 books potentially that you may want to know about. If you're out there hunting in the wild, perhaps you want to add one of these amazing books to your collection. But of course, before I get to the video, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I appreciate it. Help support the channel, doing those things. But let us talk about Dave Stevens here today. Now, without giving you guys a lengthy bio about this artist, Dave Stevens was a prolific illustrator in the 1980s, probably most famous for having created The Rocketeer, but he really got, a lot of his big following in the comic book market, having drawn effectively, very, very beautiful, often mature content for comic book collectors and comic book readers who obviously loved his work for the articles. But even though Dave Stevens has always been popular, he's always had his following, in the recent few months, there has been an absolute explosion of FOMO for Dave Stevens covers. In fact, at the time of recording this video, I have just finished going to WonderCon, and Dave Stevens was some of the most popular books at that particular show. And I was talking to a lot of the people around the show as to why they think, this explosion happened. And everybody that I spoke to pointed to this particular documentary Kickstarter that came out last June, June 6th of 2023 to be exact. What had basically happened is that these filmmakers created a documentary about the life of Dave Stevens, and then they eventually created this Kickstarter to, raise funding to be able to deliver, the Blu-ray and the physical copies of the actual movie itself. And the Kickstarter was tremendously successful. It raised a lot of awareness for Dave Stevens. And this was probably the one little tentpole item that kind of needed to be the catalyst into what caused sort of that initial FOMO into the comic book market. I mean, we're all sort of in the space of collectibles and tactile physical media. And that kind of led its way into people starting to buy up all of the Dave Stevens covers, which really culminated in this last week with the Planet Comics #1 sales at the 9.8 and 9.6 level, setting record prices for these particular books. And you guys can see right here, here on Key Collector, this is actually the hottest book this week. 3 9.8 sold this week and established a new record over the previous 9.8 record of 1,227. It initially broke with a 1,295 sale, and then it went to 1,875 quickly after that, and then it went to 2,291 just after that. And this also leaked over to the 9.6s, where the previous record was 700, and then it went to 750, and then it went to 799, and then even a 9.4 is currently selling at the $575 range. You guys can see right here, it's a book from 1988, currently has 433 universal copies on the census, so not too many overall. There's 68 9.8s. Last few sales, of course, are the ones that have been the record for this book. But you guys can see, this is a book that has, maybe had its audience, had always been desired, and it was slowly on the rise. But these last few sales have really exploded onto the market. And you actually get a very clear picture here at the 9.6 level, because unlike every other book in the comic book market, these books didn't necessarily explode during COVID in 2021. It took a while for the market to turn its attention to these particular keys right here. And you guys can see the perfect timing for which this lines up with the Kickstarter documentary. There in July of 2023, it was $336. And then once the documentary came out, well, what do you see? You see the rocket ship, this thing absolutely exploding to where here in 2024, it's really doubled every single time there's been a new sale for these books. And this is where you always have to be, a little bit careful. Once things get white hot, like they are right now, well, then everybody who has these books is now motivated to send them into CGC for grading. I mean, I'm not going to say that there's tons of copies out there that are at the 9.8 level. I mean, it is a very obscure kind of indie book. Like, who really knows how many raw copies are out there? But there's probably raw copies that are out there that are 9.8s, right? I mean, we have to expect that the census is going to get bigger, especially when people, see prices that they're seeing, where this is a book that's, now at the 9.8 level sells for $2,000. So very interesting, very cool to see this. Now people are getting on the Dave Stevens hype train. And, let's face it, when it comes to comic books, no matter what genre you like your comic books in, whether you're a Golden Age collector, maybe you're a modern variant collector, or maybe you're a Dave Stevens collector, I mean, the mature style of covers that are like the Good Girl art covers, or, we talk about the cosplay variants of the modern age, or we talk about Matt Baker covers from the Golden Age. I mean, these covers are popular for a reason, right? Everybody loves the articles of these comic books. And, it's like lizard brain, total lizard brain. We all love it. We all know what it is. And, comic book collectors especially are always going to have an attraction for these types of books, which is why there's a lot of speculation going on in the Dave Stevens market. So for the rest of the video, I wanted to talk about, some of the interesting comics, at least ones that I have picked out that tend to have, a desire on the secondary market. And these are the ones that I've noticed being really hot and being shared on social media. Of course, we have the 3D Zone number 16, the Space Vixens book right here. Again, what is the significance of this? Do I really need to say? I mean, really, it's just cover is king, with Dave Stevens books. And frankly, I mean, I think it is fair to say that Dave Stevens is a tremendous artist. Like, he was able to draw really great figures. And while I am indexing on the 8008s style of covers for you guys here, he does have some very cool, we'll call it like superhero style of covers as well. And he's got his Rocketeer books and things like that. But, is anyone really interested in that? No, of course not. This book right here has 144 universal copies on the census. 9.8s have 27. So also another book, very hard to find this at the 9.8 grade. And another one that you guys can see, the last, year or so, the last few months, this is a book that has really, really shot up. And, one of the things that I forgot to mention is that, a lot of the Dave Stevens books actually were 3D interiors and came with, your very own 3D glasses, which made them extra special. It was like back in the 80s, we had our Oculus headsets already. We were already living in 3D world. All right, next book here, Vanguard Illustrated number 2. This is a book that came out in 1984. And another book that, the comic market likes to collect for all the reasons we stated previously. This one right here, 339 universal copies on the census. Funny enough, there's actually one 10.0 and there's also another 9.9. So CGC was speculating on Dave Stevens books all the way back when. Look at this 9.9 selling for $87. In 2009. Can you guys imagine what that would sell for today? Well, if the 9.8s, which have 184 on the census, so pretty high 9.8 rate, are selling 30-day moving at the $400 range, you got to imagine that this would easily be, into the high mid four-figure level. But again, look at the graph, guys. Starting in basically June of 2023, right when the documentary came out, I mean, this thing quadruples overnight, and every single sale has been higher than the last. Which is pretty crazy with these books. And again, like I always say, you got to be a little bit careful out there, if you're buying these already graded books, because that when the prices are going this crazy, there are people that are pulling out, their back stock. There are people hunting in the wild looking for these books in their collections. So we know that more are going to be added to the census. How many more? Well, it remains to be seen. All right, next book here, Seduction of the Innocent, 3D number 1. This one right here might be the flagship book of Dave Stevens. I think that This is one that a lot of people have sort of seen this cover. You combine it with the Seduction of the Innocent, which of course has its significance in comic book history with that title. And another 3D book right here. You see 210 universal copies on the census, 86 of which are at the 9.8 level, 30-day moving around the $400 level as well. Then you have Elvira's House of Mystery number 11. And I pull out this book because I feel like this has kind of a unique crossover between Dave Stevens fans, and then now you also have the Bronze Age horror fans, which frankly, if I was going to lump people into a bucket, I would imagine that Bronze Age horror fans are also, there's a lot of crossover. And then also you have the Elvira on the cover, which again, I would say is another crossover between, Dave Stevens fans and Elvira lovers, probably like the same type of aesthetics. I mean, I consider myself an Elvira fan. I loved her movies growing up, and I would say that she turned me into the man I am today. But this one right here, Elvira's House of Mystery number 11, a book that came out in 1987, 165 universal copies, 9/8, 33 on the census. Hasn't been a sale in quite some time, but the last sale for it was, around the $800 range. You saw one right here that was a pedigree that sold for $1,500 and then $1,100 prior to that. But much like, all the other Dave Stevens books, again, after the documentary, boom, shoots up tremendously, and every sale since then has been higher than the last. And this is one that I would imagine, because it is a DC publication, there might be more copies out there, as far as like how many they printed back in the day, but you're combining a lot of elements here where this is an all black cover, so it might be tricky to find it at the 9.8 level, but I would say, 33 with 165 on the census is a decent 9.8 rate. All right, next book to talk about is this World of Wood number 1. This was a Eclipse comic series that had a combination with Wally Wood, of course, another famous artist in the comic book space. This run right here is just considered one of Dave Stevens' more rare covers to get. You have the girl getting covered right here with the tentacles. Even back in the 80s, they had hentai. And if you don't know what hentai is, first of all, you're lying. I know you know what hentai is, but second of all, if you're curious, don't actually Google it, especially at work. You're not going to like it, or maybe you are going to like it. I don't know. You guys are sick. But, this one's kind of a cool cover because it does combine the fantasy elements. You got skulls on the cover right there, and is another kind of, fun book to have in the Dave Stevens world. 9/8, only 19 on the census, only 81 universal copies graded, and the 90-day moving for the 9/8 was actually at the $1,300 range. So a pretty expensive book for that one right there. You got Alien Worlds number 4, another kind of classic Dave Stevens cover. There's also another Alien Worlds cover that is similar. These style of covers often remind me of Frank Frazetta. Like, I wonder if Frank Frazetta was a big kind of inspiration for Dave right here. 311 universal copies, 9/8, pretty high, 157, and then 30-day moving around the $300 range. You have DNA Agents number 24, another kind of classic, I would call this like an 80s good girl art cover where you have her sort of on the magazine right here. I mean, you got the rainbow bright hair going on, which is, very, very 80s to me. 193 universal copies, 42 9/8, and 1 year moving is 380. I would imagine that if this book sold at the 9/8 level today, it would go for pretty high. And then the last two I wanted to sort of quickly talk about were Cheval Noir. These books actually came from Dark Horse and were a little bit more of a premiere format, back 1989. I mean, the cover price for this was $350, so it was basically double that of what you would get with other comic books. But of course, Cheval Noir number 1, you guys can see why someone would want this book right here. 9/8 have 35 in the census, 30-day moving is 633, and then Cheval Noir number 7, which of course is another one that people like to collect, classic kind of good girl art with a very, very mature style of drawing. 141 universal copies on the census, 9/8 have 45, and like number 1, also moving at that $686 range. And there you have it, guys. Dave Stevens books. 10 of them, which I have noticed have been hot in the market, moving a lot. Of course, there's a lot of other Dave Stevens books that people like. It's not always, the mature variety. There are some other covers that I'm sure people, love. And of course, he created The Rocketeer, which is, pretty ironic that he created probably one of the most wholesome, superheroes there is in pop culture. And then you have all these sort of mature images and books that he also created that have a lot of collectability, a lot of desirability, and the market is going absolutely crazy for them right now. But that's all for this video. That was me covering the Dave Stevens craze. What do you guys think about all this? Have you been a Dave Stevens collector for a long time? I mean, there is no denying that in the last, handful of months, these books have gone absolutely crazy. And you have to imagine that there's going to be a little bit of a pullback at some point as more inventory comes to market that is motivated to sell because they're seeing these crazy prices. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I know you guys enjoyed it. I know exactly why you guys enjoyed this video, and I'm going to end it right here and enjoy myself with my World of Wood #1. Happy April Fools. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe. Kickstarter is live. Link in the description. I don't have any Dave Stevens covers. I'm sorry. But it's a good read. Oh, I know you guys don't care about that. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next video. Men of Culture. We meet again. Funny to see you here in this video. Does the missus know that you clicked into this video here today? Are you in the bathroom right now watching me? Hidden from We meet again. Funny to see you here in this video. I know I hooked you with the old calculator trick. Men of... Yes, I am in my room by myself and making myself laugh as I record. All right, we're going to get this done. Like, amazing covers by Dave Stevens himself. Hey, my eyes are up here, by the way. Just because I hold comic books here around my torso does not mean I want you to ogle my World of Wood #1. You can't write this stuff, guys. You can't write that World of Wood.